Okay.
Because they're on the boss's party.
Sorry, let's get back to this. I apologize for the extremely long interruption, but this is working again.
Take your time.
So, I should have had you go ahead and answer these. So, answer the following using the diagram. Let's find all the linear pairs of angles. Remember, in order to be a linear pair of angles, they have to be adjacent. That means they have to share a side, and their other two sides have to make a line. I'll give you one example, and you need to come up with the other three. One example of that. Why is this not working? Is angle 1 and angle 2. See if you can find the other three pairs of those. Check with your neighbor, make sure your neighbor has the other three. Go. Check.
One and two, 3 and 4, 1 and 4, 2 and 2.
Don't say it aloud.
Is that right? 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4. Yeah, I got it. I'm just like that.
I mean,
So, the other three are angles 2 and 3, angle 3 and 4, and angle 1 and 4. Those are all linear pairs. So, what's the relationship between the measures of the angles in a linear pair? Yes.
they equal 180.
So each one of them equals 180? That's not what you mean. What do you mean?
Together, they equal, two of them equal 180.
Together how?
Next, adjacent, next, supplementary.
Each linear.
No. You were on the right track.
Okay.
But what do you mean when you say together?
Two adjacent angles.
No. I don't care about all that. What do you mean by together?
Like, next to.
Nope. Yes?
The sum of the two angles.
Yes. The sum of their measures, or if we add their measures to each other. When you say together, you actually mean add. Right? So when we add their measures together, we get 180. So what do we say about those angles then? What is that called? The angles are supplementary. Okay? So their measures add up to 180, so the angles are supplementary. My pen thing, oh, it's finally started working again. So they add to 180. So let's let angle 1 be equal to 35 degrees. So someone tell me, don't do the math, but just tell me, how can I find angle 2 then? Got all kinds of people volunteering. Yeah, I haven't talked to you. Christina, tell me.
180
Minus, yeah, minus 35. Thank you, ma'am. That's going to give me 145. Because those two angles are a linear pair, their measures have to add up to 180. Then how could I use that to find angle 3? Yes?
well, angle 3 is adjacent to angle 1. right?
It's not adjacent to angle 1.
I mean, not adjacent. Congruent, right?
Well, we haven't talked about that yet, but it is true. But my question was, how could I use the 145 to find the measure of angle 3? What kind of angles are...
Subtract 180 or 145 from 180.
Yeah, 180 minus 145, that's 35. And what you were saying is true. These two angles do end up being congruent to one another.
Yeah.
Likewise, what's angle 4 going to turn out to be? Anybody? 145. What's the name of the angles 1 and 3? Yeah, vertical angles. Very nice. Those are vertical angles. And you've already noticed this. What do we notice about angle 1 and angle 3? About their measures? All right, so let's be careful. What does the sentence say about their measures?
Oh.
The measures are equal. If I'd asked, what do we know then about angle 1 and 3? About the angles are congruent.
Okay, that makes sense.
So they are equal. So, let's move on to page 2. A theorem is a statement that can be proved true based on prior postulates, definitions, and other theorems. So things that you already knew were true. We just used the angle addition postulate and the fact that the angles in a linear pair are always going to add up to 180 to prove this, that vertical angles are always going to be congruent to each other. So, let's find the measures of all the angles in this picture. Some of them we can do really, really, really quickly. What's an angle? I'll take a volunteer that I can find very quickly. Yes, sir.
BTC.
Yeah,
It's 65.
it is. It's 65. Because vertical angles are congruent to each other. Yes, ma'am?
DTC is 47.
Yeah, DTC is 47 because it's a vertical angle with FTA. We still need to find angle ATB. Yes, ma'am.
68.
Okay, tell me how you found that. There's multiple steps involved in that. Tell me what you did, please.
Use 180 to minus angle ETF and ATF.
Okay, so this is a straight angle. And so did you add these two together first?
Yeah.
And what's the sum of those two?
112.
So what is she using? Anybody? What are we using when we find that that's 112? What is that I just used? 3 words. The first one is angle.
Angle addition postulate.
There you go. It's the angle addition postulate. Then go ahead.
And use 180 to minus the 180.
Yeah. So since these two angles are a linear pair, I'll just take 180 minus 112, and that's 68 degrees. Which means then that ETD is 68 degrees. All right, well, let's kick it up a very small notch. Let's solve these for x. What kind of angles are these two angles? Anyone?
Vertical.
Vertical angles. If I have two vertical angles, what do I know about them? They're congruent. So, yes, their measures are equal, the angles are congruent. Okay, so, what do I know about their measures? They're equal. So 5x plus 9 is equal to 7x, God bless you, minus 5. So that'd be 2x is 14, so x is 7. And then for number 2, what type of angles are those two? Actually, let me write this. These are vertical angles. Every now and then I think, is it vertical with an AL or a vertical with an LE? I think it's AL, but
Wait.
my brain always thinks that there's more than one right way to spell vertical.
Aren't there several ways to spell gray? What is it?
With an E or with an A.
I do with an E. Is it one of them?
Gray with an E and gray with an A are essentially the same thing.
I think A is like the American and then E is British.
Is it?
I think so.
Did not know that.
Or it might be the opposite.
Yeah, I'm good with either one of those. All right, what kind of angles are the second pair of angles?
Linear.
They're a linear pair. What do we know about the angles in a linear pair? About the angles? Yes, ma'am.
They equal 180.
Okay, so I changed up the wording on this one. What do we know about the angles? What do we call those? Yeah? Yeah, they're supplementary. So what do we know about their measures?
180.
What about, what do you mean 180?
The sum of the angle of the two of them, 180.
Yeah, the sum of their measures is 180. So 3x plus 12 plus 8x plus 36 is 180. That's 11x plus 48 is 180. So that's 11x is 132, giving me x is 12. All right, any questions about that? All right. So let's try an interesting problem here. So here, we're told several pieces of information. I suggest that each piece of information, as soon as you get it, you mark it on the diagram. So first of all, ray AT bisects angle SAV. If we bisect an angle, what does the definition say happens? Yes?
Bisect an angle, their measures are equal.
Okay, not quite, but what would you say about the angles?
They're congruent.
Yeah, the angles are congruent. That's what the definition says, which means the measures are equal. So we'll mark that these two angles are indeed congruent to one another. Then the measure of angle RAS is 4x plus 62. And the measure of TAV is 3x plus 14. And then they ask us to find the value of x. And it's not immediately obvious what you ought to do in this one. But is there any way those two angles, at least by appearances, have the same measure? No. Are those two angles, the 4x plus 62 and the 3x plus 14, are they a linear pair?
Yes. No.
I got a yes and a no so far.
No, they're not a linear pair.
Yeah, why would
Yeah.
So angle RS and TAV are not a linear pair
Because?
because there's an angle between them.
So they're not, one word,
They're not supplementary.
nope,
not adjacent?
they're not adjacent. They're not adjacent to one another. These two do make a line. That's part of the definition of a linear pair, but they're not adjacent. It has to be both. So you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, if these two angles are congruent, their measures are the same. So if the measure of this is 3x plus 14, that's also the measure of this one. And since RAV is a straight angle, what's the sum of all three of those angles? 180. So our equation would be 4x plus 62 plus 3x plus 14 plus 3x plus 14 is equal to 180. Again, I suggest that, we talked about this the other day, write them all out. Don't group like terms until you have it written out. So that's going to be 10x, so that's 28 plus 90 is equal to 180. Subtracting, we get 10x is 90. So the value of x is 9. All right, any questions about that? Cool. All right, I have a worksheet for you for your homework.